G'day expats and welcome to another episode 63 today of Expat Chat. And as always, joined with my co-host, the Managing Director for the EMEA region of Atlas Wealth, Brett Evans. Brett, how's it going in the sandpit today?
And all good here. It's people are back with a vengeance from their holidays. It's we're busy,
I bet.
and one of the reasons we're busy we'll talk about in today's topic. But before I go any further, for the folks out there who are new to the E waves or the I waves in terms of absorbing expat chat, the better looking brother of mine is Jack Ridley, who's the managing director of the Australian office, and people have said looks like a Siamese twin, but I didn't see it.
I don't know, my dark features compared to yours, that's
Yeah.
questionable. I haven't, I'd love to see you grow a bit of a beard or some stubble. You're very clean cut all the time, actually. That's probably one major difference I've noticed.
I would love to, and I think I would be kicked out of my house. So my daughters complain when I kiss them, and I've got like 2 days growth.
Bit of
They reckon
stubble,
all
like
spiky and
razor
stuff.
blades.
And I keep
Yep,
telling them, no,
yep.
the longer it grows, it gets softer and gets nice, and you'll love it. No,
It does.
it's an
I,
unequivocal no
I
from the 3 girls.
Definitely does. It's a shame. I've got all these greys popping out underneath my chin and places, and it's funny when you try and find them amongst all the black hairs and pull them out. God, it's annoying.
Okay,
But anyway,
I reckon there'd be more grey in my beard. That's probably one of the other reasons why I haven't done it. I just don't want to see what it would look like.
hey, you can buy products for that dye.
Oh,
Not that I know anything about that.
of
God,
course
that's
not,
terrible.
no,
No.
but a friend told me.
Now, mate, a good topic today, and it's to be honest, we could hear a lot sooner about what way it's gonna land, and I'm talking about the residency rules, which
Yep,
are forthcoming very quickly. I mean, we're going to hear about them in the mid-year budget, which is
25th of
end of
October.
October, start
Yep.
of November. Yep. So there's a few things going on which we definitely want to educate our listeners about, but I guess before we do so, quick little disclaimer.
Disclaimer, all the information that we're about to share with you, great folks, today should be construed as educational or informational purposes only. Do not construe this as personal advice. If you do need personal advice, give us a shout.
Sounds good, mate. Now, listen, the residency rules. Now, we should probably, as always, do a bit of a refresher.
Yep.
Quick refresh, high-level summary of the residency rules. Did you want to take us away?
Okay, so back in 2015 through to 2017, the federal government approached the Board of Taxation to do a review of the tax residency rules. These rules have been in
Right.
place since 1936. They're
Mm,
old, they're antiquated. It's
very old.
like an old
God.
car with the suspension shot, and there's the fabric in the seats is torn, and yeah, it's not fit for purpose.
It's not pretty.
No, it's not pretty, not pretty. So they reached out to the Board of Taxation and said, hey guys, you need to look into this. 2019, the Board of Taxation prepared that report, delivered it to
Hmm.
Canberra, and essentially they proposed what we call a bright line test. And
Hmm.
essentially the way that works is there's 2 parts to the equation. First part is, have you been in Australia for greater than 183 days? If the answer is yes, you're a resident for tax purposes. If you have been outside of the country for greater than 183 days, so therefore less than 183 in Australia, then we have these new tests. And the first
Mm.
test is what we call the 45-day rule. Have you been in Australia for greater than 45 days? If the answer is no, you are unequivocally black and white, roll gold, you are a
Hmm.
non-resident for tax purposes. You could own all of Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane, and you still are
Yeah,
a non-resident for tax purposes.
that's right.
Where it gets grey is then if you are in Australia for between 45 and 183 days, then that's where things get a little bit different. So we have these 4
Mm.
factor tests. The first factor test is, and just to highlight, you only need to fail 2 of the 4 in order to be deemed a resident for tax purposes. So
That's right. Yep.
first factor test is right of abode. Can you rock up to an airport or a port and gain lawful access and entry into Australia with the right to reside? So that includes PR as well as Australian citizens. So
Yeah,
most people, everyone will fail that one.
that's right.
Second one is what we call the family factor test. Family factor test is, do you have any wife, partner, spouse, de facto, and or children under the age of 18 living in Australia? And
Yeah. Yep.
that won't apply to everyone, but there's quite a few out there whose families are dual national in terms of from a residency point of view.
Mm.
So
Mm.
that's a key consideration. So that won't
Yeah,
really
it'll be
yeah.
You're right. It won't trip too many people, that one. But I mean, you and I, we both share clients where kids are back in Australia bordering, at Australian schools and some of the private schools, state schools, whatever it might be. Even kids going to just normal schools, but living with family and friends. Yes, so I do believe a lot of expats will still be captured by that because it's an easy factor to satisfy. And I guess I'll finish off the remaining two.
Please do.
Um, Next one is Australian accommodation. So the way this has been worded, it's essentially a main residence or a property we own that is vacant that we can move into straight away if we wanted to. It's not on the rental market. It's not treated as an investment property or anything like that. That's part one underneath the Australian accommodation test. It doesn't include, things like family letting us move into a quick little room to stay while we're there for a couple of weeks or staying with friends, anything like that. That's fine. Don't worry about that one. What's unique about the Australian accommodation test is they even included us owning or having a share or in a timeshare, in a holiday resort or something like that. Because technically speaking, you can still come back and use that for up to 10 weeks, which would blow through that 45-day factor test, as you alluded to earlier. And then the last one is Australian economic interests. And this they definitely need to provide some clear guidance on. This is what's, I think, got a lot of expats sort of treading water at the moment in a holding pattern because, Australian economic interests, they put forward a proposal that they put, having significant assets or cash in a bank account. They said they didn't give us a threshold, but they've just said it could be that. Having ties to a discretionary trust or a family trust. Plenty of expats, they're still tied to a discretionary trust or family trust. They even mentioned it could potentially be an Australian superannuation account. Well, we know that's a bit of a catch-all, isn't it? And then lastly, the common one is taxable Australian property. If we own taxable Australian property TAP, which is physically bricks and mortar type assets back in Australia, that might be an investment property or a former main residence. So there's a bit of a double up there with the Australian accommodation. But most expats on the surface of those factors, I would say, would satisfy right to reside, right to abode, which is permanent resident, Australian citizen, as well as Australian economic interest. I think most expats will be caught out by those provisions. And you only need to meet two, and then your residency starts on the first day that you arrived when that 45-day test started. So yes, that's how it's been written so far, but needs to be an amendment, doesn't it? They need to change what they've proposed.
It does. And what we're seeing is a bit of an unfair balancing act between Australian expats overseas because those people who reside in a country that does have a double taxation with Australia, and for those listening, it's very simple to find out. Just type in whatever country you're in, Australia, and the word DTA, and you'll see whether it's on that list or not.
First thing on Google.
Yep, exactly. That's right. So you've got that. Then the second one is you've got the scenario of people who don't live in a country with a DTA. So right. a DTA or a double taxation agreement, in there is what we call the tiebreaker clause that virtually says you can't be deemed a tax resident of two countries, and therefore it defaults to you're a tax resident of the country that you reside in. So if you lived in Singapore and you spent 90 days in Australia instead of 45 or less than 45 under the new rules, then even though according to the new rules you'd be deemed an Australian tax resident, you have the protection of the DTA that says, no, you're actually a non-resident.
That's right.
Unfortunately for folks in Hong Kong, UAE, Saudi, Greece, Portugal, a lot of other countries, there is no DTA. And the problem with that is there is no tiebreaker clause. So potentially, if you fall foul of the new proposals, you could be paying tax, Australian tax, on your overseas income. Now, if you're a resident in a country that has a high tax rate, that's not necessarily the end of the world. If you're in a country that doesn't have a low tax or has a low tax rate or no tax, Saudi, UAE is a good example, then there's problems because yes, we don't pay personal income tax in the UAE, but we do pay high fees that are what we call the Dubai tax. So there's a tax there built into the system.
Hidden tax.
Hidden tax. So what that means is now suddenly you've got the problem of paying tax, Australian tax on an overseas income because you don't have the protection of the DTA. The other problem you've got too is under the new rules, in order to become an expat for the first time, it is a lot more complicated. Under the current rules, you jump on a plane as long as your actions map to that of those four tests that the original resides, domicile, 183 and Commonwealth Super test for 2 years at least, you are a non-resident for tax purposes. That's the test. Whereas
Yeah.
under the new rules, unless you're leaving the country with an employment contract for at least a 2-year contract period, you could still be a tax resident of Australia for up to 3 years after going
That's right.
overseas. So let's say, for example, you want to try your luck in Saudi. Neom's, looking pretty cool. There's a lot of money being thrown around. I thought, you know what, let's have a crack at this and get some, try and leverage on my skills and intellectual property. You fly into Saudi, you leave Australia without a contract. Technically speaking, you have to then meet the severing residency ties for up to 3 years. So you could potentially be paying Australian tax on a Saudi income for up to 3 years. Yeah. So it is very, very convoluted. And, we're actually pretty proud and pleased to announce today that we've had our federal government petition approved by Canberra. And as we've discussed for the last, sort of 10 minutes, there are inadequacies and there's inequities involved in the proposals.
Absolutely.
So what we need to do is we don't ask the audience for a lot. Actually, we don't ask them for anything. Every now and then we say, send us a question or give us a review, which they do. And we're really thankful. But now we're reaching out to you guys. We need you a lot. Yep. Going up in the link below, in the show notes below, there's a link to an article that explains the petition that we've lodged with Canberra. Right. And we need as many signatures as possible on this. We have until the 5th of October at 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time to get as many signatures as possible. We've asked for a number of key amendments to the proposals that the Liberal Party presented in the budget last year, and I'll hand it over to James to talk about some of those requests that we put in there.
That's right. And I mean, you hit the nail on the head, Brett, before about the inadequacies between countries that have a DTA and those that don't, because there are so many, especially throughout the Middle East, Southeast Asia, European countries as well, that don't have a DTA with Australia at all. So immediately, those expats or Aussies that are in those countries, they're already at a disadvantage, and they really have to tread carefully under this 45-day rule. Having your tax-free income, I suppose, taxed by the ATO, and the new rules are meant to be quite adhesive, being able to meet that employment rule, those sort of things. So it's going to be very tricky to navigate. But as part of this petition, one of the key changes that we want to see is that they are going to increase the 45 days to at least 90 days. We did see recently in an article from the Australian Financial Review that the Treasurer, they mentioned that they're considering an update on the 45-day factor test. That's all we know, not much more, to be honest. But what they should look to do is increase it to 90 days, which is very similar to a few other countries. And there should be some other caveats included in the residency rules. And I mean, some of the proposed, I suppose, caveats that we believe should be included is, they've got the factor test that they've announced, but there should be a scoring, I suppose, point system that really fleshes out their ties back to Australia, makes it a lot easier to understand.
And let's just talk to the folks on the scoring system, because I think that's an important point. To me, just because you've got an Australian passport doesn't mean you're a tax resident. So that would receive a lower score as opposed to if you had your wife, partner, spouse and or kids living back in Australia, then that would present a stronger case that you do have enduring ties back to Australia. Economic assets, less so, because Emiratis and Americans and Chinese and Russian and British and people invest in Australia all the time. Yep. So, just on that scoring system, there needs to be some sort of weighted score that gives you an answer as to whether you fail or pass that test.
Yes. And I mean, that's probably what should also be part one. It's part of that 45-day rule and that scoring system. And they really need to reinvent this flowchart that they've sort of put out as part of that Board of Taxation report, because it's like 45 days, like that hard line, and then you fall into the factor test. They need to build out a better system there. But I guess the point there also is scoring system, very important. I think the 90 days is crucial. I really think that's crucial. As part of the other caveats that we announce or amendments, it's about provisions or exclusions for travel during times of, say, war or what we just all been through, the pandemic, people being stuck in Australia, can't leave, get back overseas and vice versa. I believe we also included times in regards to visiting family, those connections and visiting family for that 90 days, we need to be careful of, but also if it's as a result of family sickness and those sort of things. So having clear carve-outs around that. We also put forward a proposal that it should be amended around travel for business. If we're coming back to Australia and we're in Australia for a couple of weeks each quarter, and we're there purely for business. We're just staying with friends while we're there. That shouldn't be included as part of that 90-day test. There should be an exemption, or that should be excluded as part of that 90-day test. So that's another important one because, as we both know, many Australian expats, they return quite regularly to Australia to do business on behalf of their company or their employer, and therefore we need to be careful there. There's nothing in the current proposal around that. The other one was kids returning back to Australia for bordering, obviously doing their school, because right now that's not really carved out. It's somewhat just captured under Australian family, which isn't ordinarily how an expat operates when the kids are back. So they need to provide a clear carve out for those individual situations, which are actually very common for Australian expats. So that's a bit of an example of a few of them in terms of some of the exclusions and provisions we want to see as part of the amendments.
Yeah, I mean, to me, a lot of Australian expats work for Australian companies. That's why they're overseas. So just because they're going back to their head office for work reasons doesn't mean that should stop them at a later date returning for holidays and seeing friends and family. Unfortunately, the baby boomers are the biggest part of the demographic of the population right now. And a lot of Australian expats are dealing with sick parents that they have to travel back to. And quite often that's not a 2 or 3 day trip. You might be trying to secure a nursing home or trying to attend to operations and those sort of things. This could stand out for weeks. So, and all these things are very simple to qualify. If the ATO ever needed you to prove that were you back at work, back in Australia for work travel, yeah, easy. You can get paperwork from your employer. If you were going back to attend to sick family members, yes, you've got medical bills and all those sort of things you can show. So to me, those things are the key things. But the 90 days is the global standard. That's the thing. Yeah. And when the Board of Taxation looked at the 45, they looked at it in a very opaque glass. Yes, the 45-day does exist, but not for everyone and not in all situations, which is what they're trying to do. They're trying to do this one 45-day rule for all indefinitely, and off we go from there. So, as you've eloquently pointed out, we do have that mini budget cut up coming up on the 25th of October. It's imperative, and I don't like to beg, but I'm begging everyone out on the call today. We need your support. We need not only you to sign this petition, but we also need you to share it with everyone. We all know we're all connected to expats around the world. We need everyone to share this as much as possible. And the reason being is this will cut off on the 5th of October. Now, the reason we're using a federal government petition instead of like a change.org, change.org is great. It's visible and people can see it, and it gets, sometimes it gets a bit viral, but Canberra doesn't have to do anything with it. Whereas with a House of Representative petition, which is
this is
the official one, as being an official petition, a minister has to respond to the petition. Now, it's not hard to guess if we get a lot of signatures, then guess what? They're going to take more seriously. They're going to look into this with more detail, and hopefully we can get a bit of change before that mini budget is handed down on the 25th of October. So the timing's imperative. 25th of October is when they hand down the budget, more than likely hand down what they want to declare about the tax residency rules. So
that's right.
And it closes off on the 5th of October. We need to get this out.
Absolutely. And yeah, you're right. Everyone knows an expat, and in terms of the time frame and how long it takes, I think it took me a whole of maybe 10 seconds. You sign the petition, it sends you an email to the email you registered, and then you hit that confirmation button. That's it. And it's all anonymous. No one can download signatures, see who's on there as well. But it's a way to obviously get our voice out there to make sure that all expats are heard as part of these residency rules, especially those that aren't in a country with a DTA. And that's probably honestly our major concern there. They're being penalised for no reason. The 45 days, it's also quite punitive. You branch that out to 90 days. We can go over it over and over again, to be honest. It's just, it's a bit ridiculous, but
Everyone agrees.
hopefully,
Everyone agrees.
yeah.
I mean, the word 45-day rule is now common lingo with all expats that I'm talking to on a daily basis. They all know it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's something that has come up a lot in a lot of client catch-ups I've had over the recent months. And, and James, have we heard any more? No, we haven't. We know that they're looking at this. It's in their in-tray and we'll get an update soon. But as always, Canberra likes to keep us in a holding pattern. It seems like that's been the expat's life for a long time when it comes to legislative updates, where we can, talk about the main residence exemption, holding pattern for that for 2 to 3 years. That was pretty punitive. You had the removal of the CGT discount a long time ago as well. So it just goes to show nothing changes with Canberra, even when the new government has been put in. We know that both Liberal and Labor were still all for the change of the residency rules being updated. So we know that's not changing. We know this is going to happen, and it's very likely we'll have a new residency rule either by the end of the year, which will probably commence as of, I'm going to say 1 July 2023. That's my prediction. I don't think they do retrospective with these residency rules, because then the ATO's got to pull it apart and work out how to implement it as part of their private rulings. So yes, we really need to get on top of this. Only 3 weeks before it closes. The more signatures, the better. And obviously, send it through, as well as share it with your broader community.
Yeah, everyone. If they've got a pulse, and people to sign it don't have to be expats. The rule is you're an Australian resident and or Australian citizen. And if they care about you, care about your life overseas, or, expats in general, then they should sign it. As you said, it takes 30 to 60 seconds in terms of typing your details in, depending how slow you type. And that's it. But the good thing is, there's no reason why we can't get greater than 10, 20,000 signatures for this. It affects everyone.
We all know. Yeah, I was just going to say, we all know the Facebook groups that exist, the online communities, Australian expats. Yeah, really need to get signatures on this, because, again, this is making it a lot easier for you guys in the future.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. So, guys, I promise I won't ask anything from you for the rest of this year. I can't promise next year.
I'll hold him to it, guys.
Yeah.
I'll hold him to it.
Yep, I'm not going to ask any.
Otherwise,
okay. Let me get it all the way now. Please sign a petition. Please give us a review. Please send you any questions. There you go. I can't ask for anything else. And James, if I do ask for anything else, in the next couple of months, just give me a virtual smack it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
A few listeners are holding me to that. So
yeah, that's right. You love Twitter. You got some good conversations going to Twitter there.
How am I going to smuggle that in my my suitcase?
Yeah, that's right. Just bring red frogs, cherry ripes, and mint slice.
Mint slice?
Yeah,
Tim
those
Tams,
biscuits.
Tim Tams.
No, Tim Tams we get here. We get
Tim
Tams
fine.
here.
Okay, mint slice. Okay, yeah, okay. Should do a poll on what expats miss the most about some of their regions, and just put out all the lollies. See what comes back. That's an interesting one.
We're pretty supported here in the UAE. To be honest, here we get barbecue shapes, we get twisties, we get Smith's salt and vinegar chips, barbecue chips. We're not exactly doing without, but there are certain things. For me personally, it's cherry ripes. I just miss cherry ripes, and that's like gold currency to me. If someone's coming back from Australia, it's just like, give me a bag of cherry ripes. I'll love you forever.
Yeah, that's funny. But mate, one other announcement we've got as well, which we need to put out there, is the seminars.
Yes, so a bit of activity here in the sandpit this month. So we're in the process of rolling out seminars, and at the moment confirmed for Dubai, Abu Dhabi, potentially Saudi as well. Still trying to get Saudi organised, but definitely Dubai and Abu Dhabi. We will be sending out details, but long story short, I think it's the 27th, I think, from memory. Let's have a look here. So it'll be Tuesday the 27th in Dubai and Thursday the 29th in Abu Dhabi. So we'll put some links in the in below as well too. If you are in the neighbourhood around that time, we're going to have myself, Yawn, but James is going to be coming to us live from Dubai. He'll be here, and as well as Jeremy Harper too, who runs Atlas Mortgages, and he'll be talking about all things mortgages and property in that seminar as well too. So make sure you register, and we'll keep reminding you guys leading up to that, but look forward to seeing you on that night. So yeah, guys, petition, please, petition. We need that done. It is imperative if we want to be heard, if we want to affect any sort of change, any sort of influence, any sort of feedback, then by all means, we please need that to be done.
Absolutely, mate. This is a terrific opportunity for Australian expats to really show their voice back to Canberra. It takes 20 seconds. Don't miss out.
Yeah.
In the meantime, mate, as always,
let's wrap it up there.
Great to connect.
And we'll see you next week.
Sounds good, mate. Speak soon.
Thanks, mate. Take care.